Hello, hello, and welcome to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. What a beautiful day to inspire lives. My name is Dr. Jaime G, Raygoza, your host, and I'm so excited to have you here. Let's get ready to meet some fantastic unicorns and learn how to unleash the inner unicorn in you. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finding the Unicorn in You. Today, I have a very special individual who is on a crusade to help people have their best life possible. Rejected by his birth mother and abandoned at 16 by his adopted family, he overcame challenges most of us find very shocking, and I'm excited to have you hear his story and his lessons. So without further ado, I have Mr. Richard Flint.
Hey, Jamie, glad to be with you today. This is exciting. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. I'm very intrigued by your story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got where you are today?
I was born in New Orleans. And Jamie, if you could see my birth certificate where it says father, there's no name. I have no idea who my dad was. My natural mother was a prostitute in New Orleans, and I was the result of a one-night stand she had with a gentleman. And she didn't want me. When I was very young, I was given away and adopted by a family where I found out years later, the only reason, Jimmy, I was adopted was that my adopted dad wanted a son. They had adopted 3 daughters, but he wanted a son. And the reality is my adopted mother never wanted me. If you can imagine being a child, and my memories as a child go back to the age of 6. And when I was growing up, my birthday is real simple. God knew I was no good with math. So I was born 2, 3, 4, 5. And growing up on my birthday, never had a birthday cake. Sisters did. I was never given a birthday cake. As a child, you come down on Christmas and you get excited because there's things under the tree to be opened. And I never had a Christmas present. My sisters did. But my mother wanted me to be sure, Jamie, that I knew that I was not someone that she really loved. And picture this. From the age of 6 to the age of 16, there were 3 statements that my mother made to me almost daily. Number 1 was, "You're the stupidest kid I've ever met in my life." And we know parents don't lie. So if a parent says something, then that must be the truth. Or my mother would tell me, "You're never going to amount to anything in life." And then the one that would just rip my heart out of my chest was, "I'm sorry we ever adopted you. My greatest day will be the day when you're no longer in my house." When I was 15, when I was 12, we moved from New Orleans to Oklahoma. And when I was 15, my mother told me if I was to live in her house, and I'm a person who pays close attention to pronouns, but if I was to live in her house, I needed to pay room and board. I found a job at a local IGA grocery store there in Ardmore, Oklahoma. And every day I'd go to school, I'd go to football or tennis practice, and then I'd go to that IGA store and I'd work till 9 o'clock. And I'd call my dad to come get me. And Jamie, I'd been 16 for 2 weeks, and I called my dad to come get me, and my dad drove up in front of the grocery store. And just like I always did every night, I started to walk toward the car. My dad opened the car door, leaned across the top of the car and said, "Richard, wait a minute." So I just stopped, and when my dad stepped from behind the car in the street light, he was carrying something. And what I saw instantly was that it was a suitcase. And he walked over to where I was standing, and he set the suitcase down beside me. And he said, "Son, I'm sorry, but your mother has decided you can no longer live in her house." And if you could have known, my dad was a very great person in his own way, but he had no idea what to do with my mother. And he reached out and he put his arms around me and he hugged me. And he said, "Richard, I don't agree with this, but I don't know what to do. But I want you to know that I love you very much." And with that, Jamie, my dad turned around and he didn't walk back to the car. He ran back to the car. And leaned across the top of the car and said, "Don't forget I love you." And the next memory I have in my life, Jamie, is a guy grabbing me by the back of the shoulders and screaming at me to get out of the street, because I'm standing in the middle of the street watching my dad drive off. And my heart is about to jump out of my chest. And what was going through my mind that I wanted to shout is, "If you love me, how can you do this?" Walked back over to the corner and looked at the suitcase, and after a few minutes decided you can't spend the rest of your life standing on a street corner. So I picked up the suitcase and I walked into downtown Ardmore, Oklahoma. I went to the Hotel Ardmore and told them I needed a room, and they looked at me funny because I looked very young, but I had cash. So I went up to the 7th floor, opened the room to the door, never turned the lights on, and walked across the room and opened the window and looked down and crawled out on that ledge 7 floors up. And Jimmy, we all come to times in our life when we're at crossroads and we have to make decisions. And on that ledge, I was battling with myself because do I live or do I die? And I understand people who question life, because the only people who can contemplate or who can actually commit suicide are those who feel that if they weren't here, they'd never be missed. And that's a strange feeling. And it's an absolute empty feeling. And I sat there and I thought and I figured out, if I jumped, my mother would win. And something inside of me just said, you're not going to give that lady that victory. So I crawled back in, and the next morning I called a gentleman I knew because his 2 children were my best friends. And I told Troy what had happened, and he said, "Don't go anywhere. I'll be there." And 30 minutes later, he's in my room. And after about 2.5 hours, he asked me, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm not going back." So he helped me find a room with a lady who was the editor of the daily newspaper in town. And I paid her $5 a week to live in her house. And every day I would go to school. I'd go to football, tennis practice. I'd go to the IGA store and I'd work till 9 o'clock and I'd come home and I would sit at her table doing my homework until I couldn't keep my eyes open, because I knew that when I went into that bedroom, I was going to crawl into that dark bed and I was going to cry myself to sleep. One of the things that's missing today is that love has become a word more than an action. And so many times people tell each other, "I love you." And my background is in counseling and running a counseling center. And I used to listen to people feel those words, and I'd lay there and that statement from my dad would keep coming back to me. "But son, remember, I love you." And everybody wants to feel that feeling. I was lucky enough to get some scholarships to go to college. And I was a sophomore in college when I made the decision that I had to confront my mom and dad. Jamie, I have 16 laws, not thoughts, not principles, but laws that govern my life. And one of those laws is this: anything you don't confront, you validate. And I knew that I would never get beyond what my mother had done if I didn't confront her. It was 62 miles from my dormitory room to my front door, to their front door, to their house. And I got to their house and I drove right on by because I was terrified. But I knew I had to do this. So about 12 miles past their house, I turned around and came back, and I parked across from their house just trying to get the courage. And I told myself, if you don't do this now, you're never going to do it. So I shot my car across the street, and I got on my car and I ran to their front door because I knew if I walked, I would turn around and go back to my car. And again, all of us have had experiences where we've said, I've got to deal with this. I've got to confront this. But then the fear that we have turns to fright. And there's a difference between having fear and being frightened. And I was frightened because I didn't know what was going to happen. I got to their front door and there was the screen door and the wooden door. The wooden door was closed, and I knocked on the door, and my dad was the one who came and opened the door. And when my dad saw me, he turned as white as a sheet of paper. And I said, Dad, I need to talk to you and Mom. And I wish people could have been there because my dad didn't unlock the screen door. He stepped through the screen door. And with one hug, my dad told me everything that had been pent up inside of him. And he was just babbling. He picked me up almost off the ground, carried me into the house, and was just babbling. All of a sudden, he realized my mother wasn't there. She was in the kitchen fixing breakfast. And he called for my mother to come see who was there. And my mother walked in the doorway between the kitchen and the living. And Jamie, when my mother saw me, she just froze, and the look on her face could have killed anybody. And she took her left hand and reached around behind her and untied her apron, let it drop to the floor, reached over with her right hand and took her purse, took out her car keys, walked out the back door, got in her car, and drove off. And I never saw her again. And when my mother died, I was teaching at Ohio University. And I got the notification I had to make a decision. Do I go to the funeral or do I go be with my dad after everybody has left him? And to me, to go to the funeral would have been hypocrisy. So I chose to go back to be with my dad. And for the last 5 years of his life, he was my very best friend, as long as I didn't talk about what happened when I was 16. And that laid the foundation for my life. And it's a foundation where I've had to learn to overcome doubt, worry, and uncertainty and create a foundation of belief, trust, and faith. And when I work with people, because I take on 10 people a year and I'm their mentor for 1 year in their life. And the first thing I got to discover is, what's your foundation? Are you living in a world where you're doubting yourself, worrying about yourself, uncertain about everything in your life, so you're living from the outside in and the world controls you? Or do you have that belief in yourself, that trust in yourself, and that faith that you can achieve in your life? And it took me a while to get from living outside in to inside out. But if people could know me today, I am probably the most confident person they'll ever meet in their life.
What an amazing story. And thank you for so much for being so vulnerable and sharing all of that with us. And yeah, it's a lot that you went through. And a lot of us don't really talk about what we go through in our childhoods because we're told that we have to keep it in or we're going to be ashamed of it. But you're using all of your experiences and to empower you and to empower others. And first of all, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing that with us.
You'll understand this. For a long time, I couldn't talk about it, Jamie. I felt dirty. I mean, my natural mother was a prostitute. And then there was the shame of my natural mother didn't want me and my adopted mother didn't want me. So it must be me. There must be something about me.
Mhm.
Yet in life, and parents do this a lot. Parents program, and for my mama to tell me all those years, you're stupid, you're never going to do anything, and I don't want you. That's a lot to overcome, and a lot to be able to pick up yourself and get to the place where you can realize this is my life.
Mhm.
I'm not going to let her continue to design it because, Jamie, I lived for a lot of years trying to prove to that lady she was wrong. And I've wanted to, I wanted so many times to stand and look at her and stand by her grave and tell her, look at me. I'm not stupid. I got 4 degrees. I've written 19 books. I'm not stupid. Look at me. You said I'd never amount to anything. I have spoken all over this world. And I've had a major influence and impact on thousands upon thousands of people. And you say that I'm never going to be lovable. You don't know me. And a lot of our world today is based on perception.
Mhm.
We make statements about people that we don't know.
Mhm.
And we don't take time to get to know, not the person, Jamie, because you and I will never know the person until we understand their personality.
Mhm.
Because there's a difference. Jamie is the person that I see. But to really learn about Jamie, I'd have to understand his personality. And the more I understand the personality, the more I can see how I can either fit into that or not fit into that life. And there are lives you and I will never fit in, but people struggle and they push to fit into lives where they do not belong. I was on a call this morning with a young girl. She's 21, and her parents haven't loved her. And she wants so much to be loved that she's living from the outside in. And anyone who shows her attention, she falls in love with.
Mm.
And that's happening a lot in our society today because we don't have homes anymore. We have houses.
Yeah. No, it's very difficult. And you said a lot of good points today. And one of them that kind of want to go back into is it's really hard when you have a tough childhood growing up. I can only imagine like everything that you went through and everything that you carried those years. I had similar, not to the extent that you did, but growing up, my father was never there. I was taught that men don't hug each other, men don't kiss each other on the cheek, they don't show affection, any type of love because men are men. Like you don't have to say I love you, you don't have to say any of that stuff. That's woman stuff. So my dad never showed any affection towards me or love or things. He would say to other people, but he would never say it to me. Years went on and in college, I came out of the closet and that caused a lot of issues, of course. I ended up homeless for a little bit because my mom didn't know how to handle it. And then my dad said that he's a very strong man of God. And he said that unfortunately I was gonna die for my sins. And that was it. I cannot taint anybody in the household and things like that. So I wasn't allowed to come back. Years later, turns out that I really don't talk about this at all. This is the first time I'm sharing it on my podcast, is years later, he came out as a child molester and he went to jail. And the last words he said to me was, "Your sins are still far worse than mine." As that was the last thing he ever said to me. And he said, "Just know that you're going to die in hell. And even the things that I've done are not as bad as your lifestyle." And I just couldn't fathom this man that had this ideology on how to live his life, and he was, like, molesting children, and now he's in jail. He's been over there for the past 10 years. I have not talked to him in 10 years, and I felt like I never grew up with a loving father figure or a person that wanted me, and multiple times throughout my life, I would hear him whisper to my mom or to other family members, "I wish I never had him. This guy's too effeminate. I wish I would have had a better son. I wish I would have had a more masculine son. I wish I would have had this constant reminders that I should have never been born in his eyes." My mom, on the other hand, she did love me. She did show me love in her own way, but always trying to support my dad. So there's always that contradiction. Where I'm trying to get at is I've learned how to love myself over the past years, and I've learned how to create my own form of family because I lost so many family members when I came out. And I really do understand what you're saying that you do need to, one, confront the people because that's what I did. And it's not for them, but it's for you so you can have inner peace and not validate what they're saying to you and really convince yourself that you do matter, you are worth of love, you are worth compassion and care. And two, you create your own life and you have to believe people the first time that they show you who they are. Just don't create this hallucination of the scenario in your head that a person is a certain way when they're showing you day in, day out how they truly are and what their personality is.
Jamie, if you were to ask anyone around the world where I've been, what do you remember about this guy? They'll tell you three words because I'm driven by my philosophies. And the thing that people remember about me are these three words: behavior never lies.
Mhm.
that the essence of truth is not what someone says, it's what they do. So much of our disappointment, so much of the confusion and the conflict in our life is because of the contradiction of people around us who say one thing and do another. And that confusion can pull any relationship apart. And we got to understand that, to me, the most important presence or the most important thing I can have that people know about me is that I am a positive person who lives to create a positive presence that's present when I'm not present.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that by being authentic. But it's frightening to be authentic.
It is.
Yeah. Because you got to take what you've gone through. You've got to take all of the criticism and the rejection that people throw at you. And you just got to come to the place where you say, this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to design it. I'm going to live it. And I am going to be the person that I was put on this earth to be. I had 4 men put in my life that really took me from being someone who believed my mother to someone who understood I don't have to prove myself to anybody. One of them was the owner of the grocery store where I worked. His name was J.C. Luke. And this guy was more of a father to me than my father ever was, because he held me accountable and he taught me a work ethic. And then another one was a gentleman by the name of Spencer Hayes, who was president of the Southwestern Bible Company. And Jamie, I spent 3 summers selling Bibles door to door. And you want to talk about something that will either make you or break you. 50 doors a day I would knock on. After the second week, I called my sales manager, Clyde Irving, and I told him, I'm going home. No one likes me. No one wants to talk to me. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing exactly what you taught me in sales. I memorized that speech. They come to the door and I deliver it. He said, Richard, that's just a guide. What we want you to be is be yourself. And I have a feeling that you've gone through this too. You go through times when you're not sure who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you have to pause and you have to search deep and you have to look at yourself with honest eyes, and you got to be able to regroup and tell yourself, this is the person I'm working to become.
Mm-hmm.
And in that point is where we start making the steps forward and grow. I believe that there are only 2 ways that people can live their life: trapped in a circle of sameness, or committed to going forward with their life.
Yeah.
Which direction you go depends on what foundation you stand on in your life. I believe, and if any of your listeners can give me another foundation, I'd love to hear it. But I found there are only 2 foundations you can stand on in your life. One is based in that doubt, worry, and uncertainty. And doubt is a powerful enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful. Or the second foundation is belief, trust, and faith in yourself. And Jimmy, I don't know if you see this the way that I see it, but our world today is being led to live on that foundation of doubt, worry, and uncertainty. And it seems like no matter where you turn today, what's being thrown at us is to create doubt. And when you and I live with doubt, worry, and uncertainty, we can be led by sheep like sheep. And when you live in that world of doubt, worry, and uncertainty, you constantly are reaching out to other people to help you write the script for your life. And anyone who writes the script for your life wants to control you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at any aspect of our life today, the media, it's about doubt, worry, and uncertainty. politics, about doubt, worry, and uncertainty. I can't turn anywhere that I don't see the doubt, worry, and uncertainty. And the explosion came with COVID.
Yeah.
COVID was the doorway to make people doubt because we didn't know what to believe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we still know what to believe. It made people worry, so that people worried. And what they do, they hid in their houses. And you put those two together, and you've got this uncertainty. And people asked me today, I was doing a radio show the other day, and the guy asked me, what do you think is the one word that's driving our society today? Uncertainty. I don't know who to believe. I don't know who I can trust. Because manipulation and lying have become the message that we're hearing today. And it's all designed, and I believe this with every fiber in my body, Jamie. The mission and the crusade that's going on out there today is to break the human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can do that, then there are no more individuals. And my number one law for my life is, why spend my energy being a carbon copy when I'm the original?
Exactly.
I want to be authentic. And to do that, I got to narrow my world. And I don't know if this is true about you, but if you really want to succeed in life, the fewer people you can have in your life. I've had to eliminate a lot of people out of my life. But you know what? That's okay. Because another one of my laws is this: never keep anyone in your life who's not part of your fan club. Anyone who's not your fan is your critic. But we're made to feel guilty if I come to you and say, you know what, Jamie, we're not a good fit for each other. And I want you to have the greatest life possible. And I want that for myself. And for me, that means I can't have this relationship. I am committed to living the life that I was put on this earth to live. And that means I don't need critics. I need people who will be honest with me, who will support me, but won't try to control me.
Yeah.
It makes sense?
No, yeah, I live by that foundation as well. And the way that I have those conversations, it took me a while to get this narrative and to get this mindset. Because before, I would really struggle letting go of people because I lost so much growing up that I was like that girl you mentioned. I wanted to attach myself to anybody that showed me some type of care and compassion, regardless of their intention. But throughout my life, I've learned that not everybody has the best of intentions. So what I do now is, if I see someone that is not necessarily supportive of me and what I'm doing and what I'm trying to accomplish, then I have a conversation with them, like an ultimatum in a sense, saying, this is what I'm noticing. This is our dynamic of our relationship, and I'm not liking it. I only keep people that bring value into my life, and then I bring value to theirs. It has to be a mutual relationship. If we're not going to bring value to each other, and if we're going to bring each other down, then this is not a meaningful relationship to me. And that maybe our time has expired. So if you want to continue to stay in my life, then these are the things I expect of you and of our relationship. And if that's something that you don't feel you can meet, then this is a time where we have to part ways. And I give them a chance to have that conversation with me. And I always tell people, words are nothing compared to action. I was like, you may tell me all the right things, but I'm going to be noticing your behaviors. I'm going to be noticing what you do. At the time that you don't match what you're trying to say, then I'm going to have to cut you off. Take this as the last chance.
Yeah. My speech that I usually feel like this is, it would go something like this: Jamie, I need to ask you to forgive me because I've allowed you to bring behaviors to my life that aren't me. And that's not going to happen anymore. So it leaves us with a choice. We either find common ground, a common agenda where we can work together, or if we can't find that, then we have to go our separate ways. And the choice is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many times we try to fix relationships. We try to fix things. and you can't fix it.
Yeah, not
I mean,
always.
no, anything you fix is going to break again.
Yeah.
And it's got to be that people have to share three things to be connected. They got to have a common purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big believer in goal setting because what most people call goals are hallucinations. And that's why they don't last. But you got to have a purpose. You got to have a common agenda where we're in this together. And then you got to have a commitment that says we're going to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
And to do this, Jamie, life is based in 4 questions and they come in an order. And if a person can't answer these 4 questions, then their life is going to be filled with contradictions, chaos, and confusion. And the order goes like this. Question number 1, and this is the question that you have to start with. What do you really want for your life? Not what do you want, because that's shallow. But when you put the word really in there, what do you really want for your life? Then that lays the platform. And then why do you really want it? Is this a game to you? Is it something that you're not sure about? Why do you really want this for your life? And then the last 2 are the 2 connection questions. What price are you willing to pay to have it? You've paid a tremendous price. And it's not always an easy price. And with everything you and I want to do with our life, there's a price tag that goes with it. And we only go as far as we're willing to pay the price. And then the 4th question, what behaviors will I have to improve that will allow me to achieve this? And if someone can honestly go through those questions, they can have a purpose that's going forward. They're not going to be living in the circle of sameness. They're going to have a reason for why they're doing this. And they're going to understand this is not going to be easy. Everybody talks about simplifying your life. Life is simple when you're on the right path. But how many times in your life have you gotten distracted?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you gotten scattered or you've been influenced by someone who really just wanted to control you, not help you? And then it all comes back to what we've been talking about, behavior.
Yeah.
You are not what you say, you are what you do.
Completely agree. And I want to go back to that, what you were saying. This is analogy that I like to think. When people are driving for long periods of time, you start going into this autopilot mode where you're paying attention, but your body's more muscle memory and you're going through. And there's times that you snap out of it and you're like, oh, wow, I forgot I was driving for an instant because you're so in your head. And we have that same type of phenomenon in our lives. When we start doing the same activities over and over again, not really have purpose or not going through life with purposeful living, knowing what you're doing and actively reminding yourself why I'm doing this, you go into this autopilot where you start getting distracted in life. You start going to these different roads that you were not necessarily meant to go to or not want to go through. And like you said, this is where we need to snap out of it, remind ourselves, why am I doing the things that I'm doing, and get back on the road that I was supposed to go in. If we live life without purpose, without the foundations that you mentioned, we're going to allow other people to take the wheel of our life and steer us in ways that are not going to make us happy or make us feel fulfilled. So you have to remind yourself, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What do I want to accomplish while I'm here? And that's the only way we're going to continue on the road that is going to make us the happiest and that way we can be.
Yeah. And Jamie, what we're referring to here is change.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned this. Most people want to change as long as they don't have to change anything. They want to just maybe widen the path a little bit, but they're not willing to face themselves. And working with hundreds and hundreds of people through coaching and speaking, I have found that from the day we're born to the day we die, we are trapped by 6 fears. And we all have the same six. But what's number one in your life may not be number one in my life. But if you and I or anybody can find their number one fear, then they can control the other five. But if they can't find their number one fear, the other five will eat them alive. And watch this. And then they're in no random order. The fear of the unknown. That's huge. And that's one of the things that people are struggling with today. Uncertainty feeds the unknown. The second is the fear of abandonment. I need people in my life. Not that I want people. I need people in my life. So I'll become whatever someone wants me to be is so that I can keep them in my life. The fear of failure. And we have done so much damage, Jamie, on what we've taught about success and failure. I don't know if your listeners have ever thought about this before, but all emotions travel in threes. And when you look at success and failure, if that's the only two things we have, and I'm not a success, then how do I brand myself as a failure? But there's a third word that fits into this, and it's the term defeat. Defeat is when I give in, I go in the corner, I lay in the fetal position, and I tell myself, this is all my life is ever going to be. But failure to me, you can define it with one word: fertilizer. Failure is fertilizer. It is just a point in your life that didn't work out. And when I'm sitting there in that failure, I have to make a choice. Am I going to be defeated? Or am I going to take this situation and allow it to become a part of my foundation of growth? Success to me is a real simple word to define. It's every day putting one foot in front of the other. And then there's the fear of rejection. Everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to be loved. But we don't teach enough about no one is going to be able to love you until you love yourself. I believe this again. Everybody treats you as you ask to be treated. And then there's the fear of loss. And then the number one among young people today, the fear of success. I don't think most young people understand what success is. Why? They've been spoiled. I wish you and your listeners could have been in my life this day when I was running the counseling division for a very large church. And this guy brought his 10-and-a-half-year-old son to me and said, Richard, if you don't help me with this kid, I'm going to kill him. So we sat and we talked. And here's what I learned. Every Wednesday morning, this 10-and-a-half-year-old kid got his weekly allowance, $500 a week, cash in his hand. And by Wednesday, the kid was broke. No drugs, no alcohol. What did he do? He bought his friends, because that's what his dad did for him to teach him love. And the dad said, can you help me? I said, yeah, but we got to send your son home, because he's not the issue. It's the message you're teaching him that is the issue. And I had this family bring me into their life to work with their 12-year-old daughter. And here's a 12-year-old young lady who had a credit card with no limit on it. And every month her credit card bill was in excess of $2,500 a month. And they just paid it. And Jamie, I thought, I'd hate to be the guy that ends up with that chick. That would be high maintenance. But we are treated as we ask to be treated. And success cannot be a viable definition if I've never had to work for it. I have a company I work with in Kansas, and they're out in the middle of the wheat fields of Kansas. And they won't hire anybody that wasn't raised on a farm. Why? Because on a farm, you have a work ethic. And this new attitude today that you owe me, destroys any capability of having a life of real success.
Yeah, you need to have empathy for others. You need to be able to show people what you're worth through your work ethic, through your respect, through your sense of loyalty too. Like you don't have to be loyal unconditionally, but at least show people that they can depend on you. And I have seen a lot with the new generations that is lacking because the prior generations had so much taken away from them or they felt that their life was unfulfilled that they're trying to overcompensate with the newer generation, but we're teaching them inadvertently these other values that are counterproductive. But I do want to segue a little bit in one of my other questions. If somebody is struggling with one of these 6 fears that you mentioned, regardless of which one it is, what would be some advice that you give them to be able to help them get through the process?
Step number one, face the fact you have the fear. Don't deny it. Because if I deny it, I increase it. So I've got to face it. Step number two, examine where the fear is coming from. Jamie, there is no fear in today. All of our fears come from tapes of yesterday. And people live with 2 sets of filing cabinets in their yesterday. And yesterday is a reference library, not a room to live in. So I have 1 set of file cabinets in my yesterday. That's about all of my negatives. It's about my disappointments, my failures, all how I've been mistreated. And then I have another file cabinet over here that's about all my successes. And what I understand about my life depends on which file cabinet I go to. For years, I went to the negative file cabinet and blamed my mother. And you know what that did? It created anger. It created reactions. And I couldn't see beyond the anger in my life. And people ask me all the time, would you change your childhood? No, not one part of it. Because that's what made me the person I am today. And when I realized that my childhood was my choice to deal with, and that from that childhood, I could become an exceptional person. So what I did, and this is how I got through my childhood, I would, for a long time, I would stand in front of a mirror after I was living with this lady who was the editor of the newspaper. And I'd look in the mirror and I wouldn't leave until I could find one thing that I liked about myself. I started with not love, but liked about me. And that was hard because I couldn't see me. I could only see the person my mother said that I was. And then once I began to get through that, I could learn what is it about you to love? And from that, I built my platform where I gave myself permission to be me. And when I did that, I took away control of other people to have my life. So I got to face the fear. I got to examine where it comes from. And then I got to address the emotions that are attached to it. Every event in our life has emotions attached to it. So I need to see these emotions and feel them and see, are these emotions causing me to stay living from yesterday to today, or am I allowing myself to live from today to tomorrow? And then the last thing I need to do is I need to release myself from yesterday. Pain is something that people hang on to. Emotional pain is one of the most controlling aspects of a negative life. Now, but one more thought here. The danger is if you don't deal with your fear, it becomes fright. Fear is a positive when you understand it. But if you don't address it, then what happens? It becomes fright. And then everything you look at that you attach to that part of yesterday becomes something that you're afraid of. So I don't address it and run from it.
That is great pieces of advice, and that our listeners are really going to appreciate that. And I like how step by step you placed it. Very easy for us to follow and to really understand. Now, where I'm getting to the last question of the interview, where I pretty much ask every single guest, and it's the whole premise of the podcast of defining the unicorn in you. You are a fantastic unicorn. You went through so many obstacles in life. I mean, you used them as your strength, and you've came on top and stood out amongst several other people. Like your life could have gone in a whole different direction, but you've accomplished so much with it, and you're helping people every single day of the year. And I'm sure that they are very thankful. I'm thankful for what you do and what you're doing for our community and how many people you're impacting. So, what is one piece of advice that you can give people that will help them get out of that autopilot, as we were talking before, take control back of their life and transform themselves from that ordinary person into the unicorn that they can be?
Can I give you two?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. First of all, realize that this is your life. And for it to be your life, you've got to understand the foundation you have to stand on. If I stand on doubt, worry, and uncertainty, it's never my life. It belongs to whomever I give control to. But if I stand on that foundation of belief, trust, and faith, it is my life. And then the second thing is live every day from your mind down, not your emotions up. And there's a question that you should put in front of every decision you make. Will this decision feed my confusion or strengthen my clarity? And here's the interesting thing about that, Jamie. You give me 10 people and I'll ask that question to 8 will choose confusion because they can hide there. One of the things I learned in the counseling center is that most people want honesty as long as it's not honest. And I ask these people all the time, do you want everyone in your life to be totally honest with you? No, I do. Because I've narrowed my world to the people who are in my fan club. And I want people to walk beside me and be there to support me, not with their opinions, but with their questions. People tell me all the time, you don't give me answers. Not my job. My job is to ask you the right questions so that you can move forward.
Yeah, you have to know your life. And it's so easy for us to live life based on our emotions. And sometimes we think that emotions are fact, but they're not. And those little words that we say in our head about us or what other people say doesn't matter. It's just the way that you like what is real, define what real and what not is, what is real and what is not, and then live your life based on the real and what you find is you want your reality to be.
So are you happy in your life?
I'm very happy.
That comes across, Jamie. That comes across so strong. Yeah. And you're a rarity. Because most people today are seeking happiness and they can't find it because of the uncertainty that they're trapped in.
I used to be like that. And it's funny that you say that because it's been recent that I've learned how to be happy. I used to seek happiness from people. I used to seek happiness from situations, from external factors. But once I really started seeing that happiness has to come within, and it's as cheesy as it sounds, you have to be happy with who you are and what you've done so far. And not live life with regret because, like you said, every failure is just fertilizer that really plants the garden of your life. And when you start really realizing that every single time that you fail, I get excited. Like I find me trying something new, I used to be so scared saying, what if I fail? What if I that? Now I'm like, I hope I fail so that I can learn a bigger lesson. I hope I can. The only way you're going to get better is if you fall, because then you get to sit back and look at everything that you've done and you're like, I can improve here and here. All right, let's go again. And then go at it again.
Fertilizer.
Exactly. And it's a game. I honestly find it thrilling whenever somebody tells me, I bet you can't do that. And I was like, I probably won't the first 5 times, but I bet if you give me 10 times, like 6 chances, I'll get it the 6th time. And you just have to go with it.
There's two attitudes we live with. I can't because I won't, or I can because I will.
Mm-hmm.
We choose one of those every day.
Exactly. And that's the only way to live life. And it's all about perspective. You can stay in the bad or you can go with the good. And no matter how much bad, there's always good inside. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
This has been such an amazing conversation, and you're such an amazing individual. Like, once again, thank you for everything that you do. So, if someone wants to maybe work with you in the future, or they want to reach out to you, or just keep in touch with you, how can they do?
If it's okay, I'm going to give them 3 avenues they can reach me.
Okay.
I have just released, I've been working 5 years on this, about how to build your success house.
Hmm.
And it's 8 modules. It's a 16-week program, 8 modules. And if anyone's interested, they could go to the successhouse.co, successhouse.co, not com, but co.
Okay.
Everything is laid out there. And there's a video there I'd like to ask them to look at. And if they're interested, I would like to have a one-on-one phone call with them. And there's a place there you can book the phone call, because this is the pathway to really living the real definition of success.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's my website, which is richardflint.com. And there's all of our things we're doing. We're coming up. We do a series of small group retreats. We just finished one on learning to live from the inside out. Our next one is stop chasing your tail. How to understand pace and understand pace. And then we have every Friday, Jamie, we do every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, an open mic with me.
Okay.
And people can come on. They have to sign up for it, richardflint.com/discussion. But it's for 75 minutes. And I have a question. Like our question for this coming Friday is, what is the number one thing in your life that you'd like to overcome but haven't been able to yet? And I do a little opening, and then I just open the mics. And it's amazing, Jamie, the discussions we have. Because it's a chance, it's a chance to be around people who are committed. I get asked all the time, what percentage of people you think ever use anything you teach? 2%. 2%. And the rest of the world lives in their circle of sameness because they're too frightened to open the door. And the door cannot be opened from the outside. It has to be opened from the inside where you are.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear from you, any of your listeners. My email is real simple, richard@richardflint.com. And I answer every email personally. I answered 120 emails this morning. I don't know about you, but I don't sleep a lot. My sleeping time is midnight to 3:30. And I get up every day because I want 3 things for people: to be better, to be smarter, and to be stronger. That's been my crusade since I started this. And if God's given me one gift in life, it's to take what looks confusing to you and show you the pathway to clarity. And that's what I am about.
I love that. I love that. You're such an amazing person. And for the listeners, I'm going to go ahead and put all of these links in the show notes so that you can just click it and go through. And then also, if you go to my website at raygoza-consulting.com, if you click the Unicorn Wall of Fame, you'll see a picture of Richard on there with his bio and the links there as well, so that you can continue seeing him on there as well. But thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I really
can I compliment you? I do a lot of these shows, and you're one of the best interviewers that I've had. And I do over 100 of these a year. And you're good at what you do, Jamie.
Thank you. I
appreciate it. Because you're comfortable in your own skin.
I really appreciate that. I just try to be me. And I always tell people, consistency is key. Show them who you are and don't try to be who they want you to be. Just be yourself.
But you got to know who you are, don't you?
Yes. Yes. And that's the tricky part. It's a process.
Thank you, my friend.
Of course. And for listeners, as a reminder, shows come out every Friday at 7 a.m. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Until next time. Thank you for listening to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I truly appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained valuable insights. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. Until next time, this is Dr. Jaime Gabriel Raygoza signing off.